Tonight, you'll discover an ancient Buddhist practice that's been used for centuries to calm a busy mind and unlock peaceful, restorative sleep. I'll take you through 10 Zen stories, each one offering a unique lesson that can help you quiet your thoughts and slip into deep relaxation. These timeless tales hold the key to releasing the stress and anxiety that prevent us from finding true peace. What makes this experience special is that it works, even if you've never meditated before. Even if your mind is running 1,000 miles a minute and nothing else has helped, these Zen teachings will offer you a powerful tool. The Buddha once said, "Peace comes from within." Don't search for it outside. In the moments ahead, you'll come to understand exactly what that means and how you can apply it to your life. As we explore stories of monks, empty boats, and transformative realizations, feel the weight of your tension lift. Watch as your thoughts gradually soften and your body becomes more and more relaxed. Take a moment now to get comfortable, settle into your bed, fluff your pillow, and take a slow, calming breath. As you exhale, know that you've already begun a journey that has been waiting for you. Our first story takes place by a calm river, where a valuable lesson about how we respond to life's challenges awaits. This is the story of the empty boat. Picture yourself, like the man in the story, gently rowing your boat along the smooth river. Each evening, you treasure these quiet moments, gliding through nature's peace. But one night, as you float along, something unexpected happens. You spot another boat heading straight for you. Initially, you call out calmly, "Watch out!" But the boat doesn't change direction. Frustration builds as it gets closer. "Move! You'll crash into me!" You shout, your once peaceful mood now shattered by rising tension. When the boats collided, the man was ready to shout at the careless driver. But as he looked more closely, he realized the boat was empty. There was no one inside. It was simply floating along, carried by the current. In that moment, his anger disappeared. He felt foolish for getting so upset. What had changed? The crash still occurred, but the shift came in his understanding. There was no one to blame, no reason to hold on to his anger. The Buddha once said, "You will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger." This profound truth shines through in the empty boat story. Often, our anger and frustration don't arise from what happens, but from the stories we create about it. Why do we react this way? In Zen Buddhism, it's taught that our ego is the source of this reactivity. The ego is our attachment to a separate self, a self that we believe must be defended at all costs. When someone cuts us off in traffic, our ego sees it as a personal offense. How dare they disrespect me? The ego constructs a narrative in which we are the central character, and others are either with us or against us. Think about how often you find yourself in these empty boat situations. The driver who cut you off might have been in a hurry for an important reason. The coworker who didn't acknowledge you might be distracted by personal problems. The friend who hasn't replied might be dealing with something emotionally challenging. But instead of seeing the situation for what it is, our ego fills these empty boats with assumptions, anger, blame, and judgment. Zen mindfulness invites us to step back and observe our thoughts without judgment, allowing us to break free from this pattern and create space for understanding. Have you ever felt that rush of anxiety? The tightness in your chest, your breath quickening, your vision narrowing. These are the bells of mindfulness reminding us to pause, breathe, and check in with ourselves. Zen Master Dogen in the 13th century shared a profound truth. To study the Buddha's way is to study the self, and to truly study the self is to forget the self. When we forget our ego, when we stop defending and asserting our identity, we can finally see the empty boats for what they are. Just random events floating in the river of life without any personal meaning attached. Remember what Buddha said? Holding on to anger is like holding a hot coal with the intent to throw it at someone else. You're the one who gets burned. Every time we lash out in anger, we're the first to suffer. But when we start recognizing the empty boats in our daily lives, we free ourselves from that suffering. Think back on your day for a moment. Was there a moment when you felt hurt or slighted? Can you spot the empty boat in that situation? Can you see how your mind filled it with stories and judgments? And in recognizing that, can you feel the lightness that comes from letting go? As Buddha said, peace comes from within. The peace we're searching for isn't out there, it's within us. It becomes available to us the moment we stop attaching stories to the empty boats that come our way. Now, let's shift to a mountain path, where a monk faces a challenge that will change everything. In a quiet mountain monastery deep in the forest lived a monk who loved walking in nature, meditating on the Buddha's teachings. One day, as he walked along a narrow path, a loud, frightening noise broke through the stillness. The roar of a tiger echoed through the trees, sending a jolt of fear through the monk's body. Turning quickly, he saw the massive tiger barreling toward him, its gaze sharp and hungry. Without thinking, he turned and fled. His feet pounded the earth as the tiger's roar grew louder. In a flash, the monk spotted a vine hanging from the cliffside and seized it, climbing down with urgency. But as he looked down, dread settled into his chest. At the bottom, another tiger stood waiting, eyes locked on him. The monk was trapped, suspended between two threats. As he hung there, suspended in the air, everything seemed hopeless. But in that moment, his eyes fell upon something small and unexpected. A wild strawberry plant growing in the rock, its single ripe berry calling to him. For a moment, the monk's focus shifted from his predicament to the simplicity of the moment. He reached out, plucked the strawberry, and took a bite. The sweetness of the fruit filled his senses, and for an instant, the tiger's, the danger, and his fear melted away. He found peace in the simple joy of the present moment, accepting the danger around him while fully experiencing the beauty that life offered in that fleeting instant. The monk smiled, a quiet understanding in his heart. That fleeting taste of sweetness was more than just a brief pleasure. It was a reminder of life's inherent beauty, even in moments of great uncertainty. As the Buddha said, do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. This teaching lies at the core of the monk and tiger story, offering profound insight into the human condition. We spend so much of our lives caught between two tigers, the unresolved pain of the past and the uncertainties of the future. But why is it so difficult to stay grounded in the present moment? Zen Buddhism teaches that our minds evolved primarily as survival mechanisms, always alert for danger and planning ahead for protection. But this survival instinct, while valuable for our physical safety, can become a spiritual obstacle that distracts us from the only moment we truly possess, the present. Our minds often tell us that happiness is found in resolving past hurts or securing future comforts. But in truth, peace is only found in the present. Think for a moment. How much of your suffering comes from replaying past moments you cannot change? The regrets, the missed chances, the endings you wish you could rewrite. These are the tigers above. And how much of your anxiety is born from anticipating future scenarios that may never happen? The meetings, the tests, the looming uncertainties. These are the tigers below. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh said, "The present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you are attentive, you will see it." The strawberry in the monk's story represents this joy, simple, accessible, even amid difficulty. It doesn't deny the challenges we face, but it invites us to experience a different kind of relationship to them. That strawberry could be the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the sound of a friend's laugh, the comfort of a good meal, or the quiet miracle of your breath. In our most difficult moments, the smallest pleasures are always within reach. But too often, we overlook them, caught up in the past or worrying about the future. Zen practice teaches us to embrace a concept known as ichi-go ichi-e, meaning one time, one meeting. It reminds us that each moment is unique, irreplaceable, and a gift that can never be recaptured. When we truly grasp the preciousness of this moment, we naturally desire to be fully present for it, no matter the circumstances. The Buddha once said, "The secret to health for both mind and body is not to mourn the past, worry about the future, or anticipate trouble, but to live wisely and earnestly in the present." This wisdom urges us to reflect on where our attention habitually goes. Are we replaying past conversations or stressing over future possibilities? Can we gently return our awareness to the simple joy of the present moment, like the sweetness of a strawberry? As you face the demands of tomorrow or replay yesterday's worries, pause for a moment. What small joy can you savor right now, even amidst uncertainty? Maybe it's the rhythm of your breathing, the comfort of your blanket, or simply the peace of this moment. The Buddha said, "There is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path." By embracing the present, we discover that peace isn't waiting for us in the future. It's available right now, even in the midst of challenges. Next, we'll explore a profound lesson on suffering through the simple yet powerful metaphor of the two arrows. "Master," the disciple asked, bowing deeply before the Buddha, "I don't understand why suffering seems so inevitable in this life. Pain follows us wherever we go. Why does this happen? And how can we find peace amid such constant turmoil?" The Buddha looked at his disciple with compassion, sensing the confusion in his eyes. He understood that this was a question many of his followers grappled with. "Let me explain," he said gently. "Imagine a person struck by an arrow," the Buddha began. "This arrow causes pain, and that pain is inevitable. This is the first arrow." The disciple nodded, understanding that the first arrow symbolized the unavoidable suffering in life, physical pain from illness, injury, or loss. But the Buddha continued, "Now, imagine that after being struck by the first arrow, the person is struck by a second." The disciple's brow furrowed in confusion. "This second arrow," the Buddha explained, "does not come from outside. It is created by the mind. It's the anger, fear, frustration, or sorrow that follows the pain. This is the second arrow. The Buddha paused, allowing the words to resonate. You see, he said, while the first arrow is unavoidable, the second arrow is optional. The first arrow represents the natural suffering we all face, the challenges we cannot escape. But the second arrow, the suffering caused by our reaction to that pain, is something we have control over. The disciple listened carefully as the Buddha explained that when we face pain, whether physical or emotional, we often intensify it by adding the second arrow with our mental reactions. We become angry, resentful, or anxious, making the wound deeper. Instead of accepting the pain, we resist it, and in resisting, we increase our suffering. When struck by the first arrow, the Buddha concluded, we must recognize it for what it is, just a natural part of life. The second arrow is the one we create ourselves, the Buddha explained. By practicing mindfulness, we can choose not to let it pierce us. The disciple, now beginning to grasp the teaching, asked, Master, how can we prevent the second arrow? How can we stop our minds from adding more suffering to the pain we already experience? The Buddha smiled softly. Through mindfulness, he said. When pain arises, we simply observe it without judgment. We accept that pain is part of life, but we do not need to resist it or create additional suffering through our mental reactions. By staying present with the pain, we can prevent the second arrow from striking. The Buddha's words carried weight. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. This powerful statement captures the heart of the two arrows parable. We can't escape the first arrow, but we can control how much we suffer as a result. Why then, the disciple asked, do we shoot the second arrow? The Buddha explained that Zen Buddhism identifies several tendencies of the mind that create this cycle of suffering. First, there is aversion, the mind's natural tendency to avoid discomfort. When pain appears, we instinctively resist, adding mental tension that intensifies the discomfort. Second is identification, where we merge with our pain, thinking, I am in pain, instead of simply observing, there is pain. The Buddha paused, allowing the disciple to reflect. This subtle difference is key. When we identify with pain, it takes over our reality. But when we observe it from a place of detachment, it remains just one part of the experience. Finally, there is proliferation, the mind's endless tendency to create thoughts about our pain, amplifying our suffering. A simple headache can snowball into a flurry of anxious thoughts. What if it's something worse? What if I can't handle it? Why does this keep happening to me? What if I can't focus at work tomorrow? Each of these thoughts is another second arrow stabbing us repeatedly. These mental habits often operate automatically, which is why the Buddha emphasized the importance of mindfulness. Through mindfulness practice, we become more aware of these patterns. We begin to distinguish the unavoidable first arrow of pain from the optional second arrows, our mental reactions. The Buddha said, what you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. What you imagine, you create. This teaching uncovers the transformative power of our thoughts. Each time we react to pain with resistance or negative thinking, we create more suffering. But when we meet pain with awareness and acceptance, we create space for healing and growth. Think of a time you faced a personal disappointment, rejection, failure, or loss. The first arrow represents the event and the natural emotions it triggers. The second arrows come in the form of thoughts like, "This always happens to me," "I'll never succeed," or "I should have done better." These thoughts create additional suffering beyond the initial disappointment. As Zen teacher Charlotte Juko Beck said, pain is not something to be avoided. It's something to be experienced without resistance. This is the core of skillfully working with the first arrow. We don't ignore or deny pain. Instead, we face it with curiosity and compassion, without layering on extra judgments or stories. The Buddha taught, if you are facing in the right direction, all you need to do is keep walking. And what is the right direction? It's the one that leads us directly into our pain. Rather than running away from the hardships of life, we are called to turn toward them with mindfulness. When we do, we find the strength to face them without allowing them to compound our suffering with second arrows. Tonight, as you notice the sensations in your body or the emotions that arise within your mind, can you tell the difference between the first and second arrows? Can you meet the inevitable pain of life, whether it's physical discomfort, emotional vulnerability, or mental turbulence, with kind awareness instead of resistance? As the Buddha said, the way is not in the sky, the way is in the heart. True freedom from suffering isn't found in escaping our human experience, but in embracing it with wisdom and compassion. Let's reflect on a story that beautifully shows how recognizing the universal nature of loss can bring peace. This is the story of Kisa Gotami, a woman known for her kindness and deep love for her family. But her life changed forever when her beloved son fell ill and passed away. Overcome by grief, Kisa couldn't accept her child's death. She carried his lifeless body from house to house, pleading for someone to bring him back to life. At each door, Kisa begged, "Please help me. My son is dead. Is there anyone who can cure him?" But one by one, people turned her away, telling her there was nothing they could do. Each rejection deepened her sorrow. Then, one day, she met a wise elder who advised her, "Go to the Buddha. Maybe he can help." Clutching her son's body, Kisa hurried to the Buddha, who sat peacefully beneath a Bodhi tree with his disciples. She fell to her knees, placed her son before him, and cried out, "Master, please bring my child back to life. The pain is too much for me to bear." With a gaze full of empathy, the Buddha observed Kisa's intense grief. He could see that she was in great pain, but he also knew that there was an important lesson she needed to learn. After a moment's reflection, he said softly, "Kisa, I can help you, but first you must bring me something. Go to the village and bring me a mustard seed." Hope flickered in Kisa's heart. "Yes, master, I will find it," she said, her voice shaking with both grief and anticipation. But just before she left, the Buddha added, "The mustard seed must come from a house where no one has ever died. If you find such a household, bring the seed to me, and I will bring your child back to life." Kisa set off on her mission. Going to the first house she encountered, she knocked on the door and explained her request. "Please, may I have a mustard seed from your home, but only if no one has ever died here." The woman looked at Kisa with sorrow in her eyes and said, "I'm sorry, but my husband died last year." Thanking her, Kisa moved on to the next house. Again, she made the same request, only to hear, "My mother passed away many years ago." And so it went, one house after another, where she was met with similar stories of loss. As the day passed, Kisa began to understand something profound. Death is not just a personal tragedy. It's a part of life for every person in every family. By the time she returned to the Buddha, the sun was setting and she was empty-handed. But now, with a new understanding of life's inevitable nature, she knelt before him, deeply changed. Kisa's heart, no longer burdened by frantic hope, now found peace in acceptance. "Master," she said, "I searched high and low, but I could not find a house untouched by death. Every family bears the weight of loss. Now, I understand that death is an inevitable part of life, and no one is exempt." The Buddha's gaze softened, filled with understanding. "Kisa, you've grasped the essence of truth. Death is inevitable, and suffering arises when we cling to the transient. But by accepting the impermanence of all things, we find peace. Your grief, though painful, is not a singular burden. It is a shared experience, woven into the fabric of existence." Kisa, now free from the illusion of her own isolated pain, understood that her suffering was part of the universal human experience. This realization allowed her to lay her son to rest with dignity and find inner peace in the face of the inevitable flow of life. The Buddha's wisdom echoed in her heart. Everything that has a beginning must have an end. Accept this, and all will be well. This teaching, at the core of Kisa's journey, illuminated the path to peace. Resistance to impermanence only fuels suffering. Why do we fight so fiercely against impermanence? Zen Buddhism points to our deep desire for permanence as the root of suffering. We long for the pleasant to remain, for beauty to endure, and for our loved ones to stay with us forever. But this craving, this longing for the unchanging, creates tension and suffering. Like Kisa, we often try to reverse the irreversible, expending energy on something beyond our control. Grief often starts with denial. It's a natural response to loss, but when we stay stuck in that denial, it prevents us from healing. The Buddha didn't lecture Kisa about impermanence right away. Instead, he created an experience that allowed her to uncover this truth herself. This kind of lesson is far more powerful. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering. Kisa's attachment to her son went beyond love. It was a tight, desperate grasp that could not come to terms with his death. Her search for a mustard seed from a home untouched by death showed her the futility of clinging to permanence. Regardless of a family's wealth, happiness, or blessings, death visits all. This universal experience of loss is what Buddhists call the fellowship of suffering. When we recognize that loss touches everyone, our grief, although still painful, feels less isolating. We begin to understand that our personal pain is part of the shared human experience, rather than a unique tragedy that sets us apart. Zen Master Basui wrote, "To see the truth, leave desire behind. If you do not give up desire, you will not see the truth." Kisa's desire to bring her son back prevented her from accepting the reality of impermanence. It was only when she let go of this impossible wish that she began to find peace. The Buddha didn't try to comfort her with promises of an afterlife or a reunion with her son. Instead, he led her to accept the natural flow of life, that all things are born to die, and everything that comes together will eventually part. This acceptance isn't about giving up. It's about being in harmony with reality, which is where healing begins. As the Buddha taught, the trouble is you think you have time. Life is brief, and this truth calls us to honor each moment, each connection, knowing that nothing is permanent. Instead of feeling sorrowful or anxious, this awareness can enrich our experience with gratitude and mindfulness. In your own encounters with loss, whether it's a person, a relationship, or a significant life stage, can you recognize the mustard seed lesson? Might your suffering be intensified by resisting the natural ebb and flow of impermanence? The Buddha shared, when you realize how perfect everything is, you will tilt your head back and laugh at the sky. This perfect imperfection encompasses the cycles of life, birth and death, growth and decay, unity and separation, the fundamental rhythm of existence. As you ponder the losses you've faced and those you anticipate, remember the journey of Kisa Gotami. Can you find solace in the understanding that impermanence is a universal truth? Can you see how accepting this truth might alleviate your pain, not by diminishing your loss, but by placing it within the collective human journey? The Buddha taught, in the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. Next, we'll explore a story that teaches the value of holding back judgment and maintaining equanimity in a world defined by constant change. This is the farmer and the horse. The farmer awoke one morning to find his horse had disappeared, his stable was empty, and his prized animal was gone. When the neighbors heard, they came rushing to his door, their faces filled with concern. "What bad luck!" they lamented. "How will you manage without your horse?" But the farmer was unshaken. "Maybe," he replied. His simple response left the neighbors confused. How could he be so indifferent to such a loss? They left, murmuring to themselves. Days later, to everyone's surprise, the horse returned, and with it, a group of wild horses from the mountains. The farmer now had not one, but several horses. The neighbors returned, filled with excitement. "What incredible fortune!" they exclaimed. "Now you are rich with horses." Again the farmer smiled and replied, "Maybe." Their confusion deepened. Surely this was the answer to his problems. Yet the farmer remained unfazed. A few days later, the farmer's son tried to tame one of the wild horses, only to be thrown off violently, breaking his leg. Unable to help with the farm work for a long time, the neighbors once again visited. "What bad luck!" they said sorrowfully. The farmer's son had broken his leg, making him unable to help with the farm. His neighbors, always quick to comment on his life, came rushing to offer their sympathy. "Such bad luck," they said. "Now your son can't help you out." The farmer, as usual, remained calm. "Maybe," he replied. The neighbors were left scratching their heads. No matter what happened, good or bad, the farmer seemed unfazed. They couldn't understand how he could be so detached from the ups and downs of life. A few weeks later, disaster struck the country. A war broke out, and soldiers came to the village, drafting all the young men into the army. Many of the villagers' sons were taken away to fight. But because the farmer's son had a broken leg, he wasn't drafted. He stayed home, helping his father. The neighbors rushed over once again, this time full of excitement. "How lucky you are," they said. "Your son has been spared from the war because of his injury." And once again the farmer replied, "Maybe." The Buddha teaches us that nothing lasts forever, that everything is in a constant state of change. This truth was at the heart of the farmer's wisdom. His repeated response of "maybe" revealed his understanding that life is always shifting. What seems like a blessing today may become a challenge tomorrow, and vice versa. Why do we rush to judge things as good or bad? Zen Buddhism teaches us to stop categorizing experiences as favorable or unfavorable. This dualistic thinking only leads to emotional highs and lows. The farmer's story reminds us that we never have the full picture. The farmer wasn't tossed around by life's ups and downs. Instead, he embodied something the Buddha called equanimity, a balanced mindset that stayed grounded no matter what came his way. He cared about his horse, his son, and his farm, but he didn't let any of it disturb his inner peace. Zen Master Sung Tan explains this in the Huxin Shinming. The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When we stop forcing life to meet our expectations, we start to see things with a much wider perspective, one that often leads to surprising wisdom. The Buddha also taught, "Do not overrate what you have received, nor envy others. He who envies others does not obtain peace of mind." How often do we compare our lives to others, deciding we're either lucky or unlucky? The farmer's neighbors constantly measured his situation through their own narrow lens of good or bad. But the farmer's wisdom was different. His maybe wasn't about indifference. It was an invitation to open up to whatever life might bring. Maybe that promotion you didn't get was a blessing in disguise, leading you to a better opportunity. Maybe that painful breakup helped you rediscover yourself. Maybe that health challenge made you realize what's truly important. Often, life's setbacks turn out to be just the push we needed to move forward. Rumi once said, "What appears to be a curse may be a blessing, and what appears to be a blessing may be a curse." The farmer lived this truth not as a theory, but as a real way of being. His maybe wasn't passive. It was wisdom in action, understanding that life's full story is still unfolding. The Buddha once said that in the sky there is no distinction of east or west. It's humans who create such distinctions in their minds and then come to believe them as truth. In the same way, what we consider good luck or bad luck is merely a product of our mental perceptions. In reality, life is simply a continuous flow of causes and conditions, without inherent value as positive or negative. As you reflect on the events of your life, those moments you've labeled as good or bad, try adopting the farmer's gentle perspective of maybe. Notice how this mindset can ease the anxiety surrounding negative situations while softening the attachment to the positive ones. Can you find a sense of freedom by suspending judgment about how things should be? The Buddha taught that with our thoughts, we create our world. The farmer's maybe reminds us that we always have a choice in how we interpret our experiences, and that choice directly influences our inner peace. Our next story shows the power of non-reactivity and emotional mastery. The Buddha and the Angry Man. One day, as the Buddha was teaching in a peaceful forest, a man approached him, his face flushed with anger. The man had heard of the Buddha's wisdom, but felt threatened by the attention and respect others gave him. Filled with resentment and jealousy, he decided to confront the Buddha, to insult him in front of his followers. As the Buddha sat calmly beneath the shade of a tree, the man stormed over and began hurling insults. "You're nothing but a fraud," he shouted. "You pretend to be wise, but you're just deceiving people." The Buddha remained unmoved, his expression unchanged, his silence deepening the man's fury. How can you just sit there like you're above everyone else? Do you think you're better than me? I won't respect you." Despite the man's loud, furious words, the Buddha remained still, offering only compassion in return. After several minutes of shouting, the man was left breathless. He had anticipated some kind of reaction from the Buddha, but the Buddha's calm demeanor only left him more perplexed. Catching his breath, the man demanded, "Why won't you say anything? Don't you care what I think of you?" The Buddha looked at him with a gentle, compassionate gaze and spoke softly. "Let me ask you something. If someone offers you a gift and you choose not to accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man thought for a moment, then answered, "It belongs to the person who offered it. If I don't take it, it remains theirs." The Buddha nodded with a serene smile. "Exactly. And in the same way, if you offer me your anger and I choose not to accept it, who does it belong to?" The man's eyes widened as realization struck him. His anger had never affected the Buddha. It was only his own to carry. The Buddha continued, "When I don't accept your anger or insults, they return to you. You are the one who suffers, not me. I choose peace." The man fell silent, processing the wisdom in the Buddha's words. He understood that his anger had consumed him, but the Buddha had remained untouched by it. In that moment, he realized that holding on to anger only harmed himself. Ashamed, the man bowed his head. "Master, I now see that my anger has caused only pain. How can I learn to be at peace as you are?" With a soft smile, the Buddha replied, "Anger is like a hot coal you pick up to throw at someone, but in the process, you burn yourself. Let go of the coal, let go of your anger, practice mindfulness, compassion, and understanding, and you will find peace." The man, deeply humbled, thanked the Buddha and bowed. From that moment on, he dedicated himself to letting go of his anger and embracing peace. The Buddha's words echoed in his heart. "You are not punished for your anger. You are punished by your anger." This insight shines a light on why reactive emotions, anger, resentment, hatred, cause us so much pain. When we hold on to these feelings, we hurt ourselves far more than the person we're angry with. Every moment spent in anger steals away a moment of peace. Every thought of revenge takes away from the energy we could use to heal. So why do we hold on to our anger so tightly? Zen Buddhism reveals some reasons that make anger tough to release. First, it's our sense of righteousness. We think our anger is justified, that it's fair to feel this way, and we believe we're entitled to hang on to it. We mistakenly think that letting go of anger means letting go of the need to hold others accountable for their actions. But the Buddha's wisdom says we can set boundaries and seek justice without holding on to anger. The second reason is how strongly we identify with our emotions. We say, "I am angry," instead of "I am experiencing anger," which makes anger feel like a part of who we are. When someone asks us to let go of anger, it can feel like they're asking us to let go of a part of ourselves. Zen practice helps us create distance between ourselves and our emotions, allowing us to observe them without getting lost in them. The third reason is our cultural conditioning. We've been taught that anger equals power, that it drives us to act and demands respect. We fear that without anger, we'll become passive or be taken advantage of. But the Buddha's response to the angry man shows us a different kind of strength, not the explosive force of rage, but the steady, unshakable power of equanimity. As the Buddha said, hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. This is a law that has endured throughout time. This teaching encourages us to question whether anger is really the best response to mistreatment. Does responding with more anger ever actually solve anything? Or does it just keep the cycle going? The metaphor of the gift is especially powerful. It shows that anger, judgment, and criticism only have power over us if we choose to accept them. When negativity is thrown at us, we are given a choice. We can absorb it, letting it disturb our peace, or we can choose to let it go, holding on to our inner balance. This doesn't mean we become emotionally numb or disregard injustice. The Buddha didn't ignore the angry man. He stayed present, engaged, and compassionate, responding not from a place of ego, but from wisdom. This is the true practice of non-reactivity in Zen, not disengagement, but engagement with a different, more mindful awareness. Thich Nhat Hanh, a Zen master, teaches a practice called embracing anger with mindfulness. When anger arises, we acknowledge it, breathe with it, and treat it gently, just like we would care for a crying baby. Rather than suppressing our anger or letting it explode in unthinking expression, we allow it to be noticed with loving awareness, understanding that it's temporary and arises from causes that are ever-changing. The Buddha's profound insight, if you truly loved yourself, you would never harm another, points to the deep connection between caring for ourselves and others. Anger is a burden we place upon ourselves. Choosing peace over reactivity is not a sacrifice, but the highest form of self-care. Tonight, as you think about moments where you've been triggered by anger or resentment, try the Buddha's gift metaphor. Do you realize you have the power to choose whether or not to accept the negativity others offer you? Can you feel the freedom that comes with saying no to that gift? Remember, holding on to anger is like clutching a hot coal with the intent to throw it at someone else. The burn is yours. Let it go, and not only do you free yourself, but you create space for real resolution and understanding. Let's now turn to a story that highlights the power of impermanence and non-attachment. The Monk and the Teacup. In a remote Zen monastery, nestled in the mountains, there lived a monk who was known for his tranquility and deep wisdom. His students admired him for his peaceful presence, calm in any storm, always embracing the present without distraction. Every day he meditated, drank tea, and shared quiet teachings. One afternoon, during their tea ceremony, the monk held up a clay teacup and studied it thoughtfully. Its earthy color and simple, round shape were a reminder of nature's beauty. The students, curious about his quiet reflection, waited for his words. After a brief moment, the monk spoke. "This teacup is already broken." The students were confused. The teacup looked perfectly fine, undamaged, and whole. One of the younger students, eager to understand, asked, "Master, the teacup is not broken. Why do you say it's already broken?" The monk placed the teacup gently on the table, his expression serene. "In my mind," he said softly, "this teacup is already broken. Though it may appear intact now one day, whether soon or far in the future, it will break. This is certain." He continued, "By acknowledging that it is already broken, I can appreciate it more deeply. I can enjoy drinking tea from it without clinging to it. Its impermanence gives me the freedom to cherish it in the present." The students sat quietly, taking in the lesson. It was clear that the monk wasn't just speaking about the teacup. He was offering them a profound teaching about life. All things in life are like this teacup, he said. No matter how precious, they are temporary. Understanding this, we can embrace life fully, letting go of fear and appreciating every moment, knowing that all things will pass. When the things we cherish fade, we won't suffer because we've already come to terms with their impermanence. One older student, reflecting on this teaching, asked, "Master, does this mean we should not love or care for things because they will eventually disappear?" The monk, with a gentle smile, shook his head. "No, it means the opposite. When we accept that everything is impermanent, we can love them more deeply, without the fear of losing them. We can love and appreciate things for what they are in the present moment, without holding on out of fear. This understanding frees us to live with peace, no longer burdened by attachment to things that cannot last." The monk explained, "The Buddha taught all conditioned things are impermanent. When we see this with clarity, suffering begins to fade. The teacup story is a lesson in embracing impermanence, not just as a concept, but as a lived reality. Why do we resist change so much? Zen Buddhism teaches that our resistance comes from a misunderstanding of the true nature of life. We tend to see things as separate, solid, and permanent, but everything is, in fact, fluid, interconnected, and transient. This misperception leads to attachment, making us cling to possessions, relationships, health, and even ideas or identities as if they were unchanging. The monk's statement that the teacup is already broken offers a radically different approach to impermanence. Instead of fighting against change, he welcomes it, acknowledging that all things will eventually come to an end. This acceptance removes the anxiety of trying to hold on to the unholdable and allows him to live with greater freedom and presence. The Buddha wisely said, "The world is afflicted by death and decay, but the wise do not grieve, for they have realized the nature of the world." This isn't about hardening ourselves or becoming apathetic, but about discovering a deeper, more balanced form of caring, one that isn't clouded by the illusion of permanence. The monk's love for his teacup doesn't diminish because he knows it will break. In fact, his love is more profound precisely because he recognizes its fragile, fleeting nature. Zen master Shunryu Suzuki beautifully explained that when we embrace impermanence, we gain a sense of composure, not through resignation, but through understanding. This composure allows us to dive deeply into life because we aren't constantly at odds with its true nature. How, then, can we cultivate this perspective? We begin by acknowledging the attachments in our lives, those people, things, or experiences we fear losing most. Rather than suppressing the fear, we can gently remind ourselves that everything is temporary. Saying, "This too shall pass," isn't meant to be a grim statement, but a gentle reminder to cherish the present. The Buddha said, "Neither fire nor wind, birth nor death can erase our good deeds." This truth points to a deeper aspect of the already broken wisdom. While all material things are transient, the good we do and the love we give leave lasting impressions that transcend time. By focusing on qualities like compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom, qualities that go beyond the material world, we build a kind of security that doesn't rely on the permanence of things. Tonight, as you reflect on your own attachments, can you try to view them through the monk's lens? Acknowledge their impermanence, not with fear, but with a sense of gratitude for the precious moments they offer. As the Buddha wisely said, "The trouble is, you think you have time." Recognizing impermanence doesn't take away the richness of life. It enhances it, prompting us to fully appreciate every moment before it transforms. Now let's reflect on a story that embodies true generosity and compassion: the Buddha and the robe. During his travels across ancient India, the Buddha was often followed by many who were inspired by his teachings. One day, a wealthy merchant from a small village, moved by the Buddha's wisdom, decided to visit him. He brought with him a beautifully crafted robe made of fine silk, wanting to express his deep respect. The merchant offered the robe to the Buddha, saying, "Lord Buddha, I bring you this robe as a token of my gratitude for your teachings." The Buddha looked at the robe and then at the merchant, his face calm and filled with compassion. "Thank you for your kind offer," the Buddha said, "but this robe is too extravagant for me. I am content with the simple robe I wear." The merchant, taken aback, responded, "But Lord Buddha, surely you deserve the finest things I can offer." The Buddha, with a serene expression, replied, "If you wish to honor me, take this robe and give it to someone in true need, someone who has no clothes to protect themselves. That would bring you greater joy and merit." The merchant, touched by the Buddha's profound compassion for those who suffer, nodded slowly, his heart opening to the deeper truth. He realized that true giving wasn't about offering excess to those who already had everything. Instead, it was about offering help where it was needed most. "Thank you, Lord Buddha," the merchant said. "I will follow your advice." He took the robe and soon found a poor man in the village, shivering from the cold in tattered clothes. With kindness in his eyes, the merchant gave the robe to the man, whose face lit up with gratitude. The next day, the merchant returned to the Buddha and shared what he had done. The Buddha nodded, his approval clear. "You have done well," he said. "Generosity isn't about giving to those who expect it, but to those who truly need it." The merchant felt a warmth in his heart that he had never known before. He understood now that the Buddha's teachings went beyond material gifts. It was about understanding what it truly means to give, to show compassion, and to find joy in helping others. The Buddha taught that true generosity brings joy at every stage. It brings happiness in the intention to give, the act of giving, and the recollection of the giving. Generosity isn't just about transferring material goods. It's a transformation of the heart, a shift in the way we see the world. Why did the Buddha turn down the luxurious robe? Zen teachings reveal that he understood the importance of knowing what is enough. Desires unchecked can lead to endless wanting. The Buddha's simplicity was his freedom, freedom from the cycle of desire and the endless pursuit of more. The Buddha's wisdom about generosity runs much deeper than what meets the eye. For him, true giving wasn't about impressing others or gaining recognition. It was about seeing and responding to real need. By directing the merchant to give the robe to someone suffering in the cold, the Buddha taught that our generosity should be guided by wisdom and compassion, not by what others think. The merchant's intention to earn merit and show respect was sincere, but the Buddha offered a more meaningful path. Instead of adding luxury to his own life, he showed the merchant a way to ease someone else's suffering. In our modern world, it's easy to think that generosity is about buying expensive things for people who already have everything they need. But the Buddha's teachings help us see beyond that. He reminded us that true giving isn't about the price tag. It's about where our efforts can do the most good. The Buddha said, "If you knew what I know about the power of giving, you wouldn't let a single meal pass without sharing it." This powerful reminder shows that generosity isn't just about making someone else happy, it's transformative for us as well. Each act of genuine giving helps us move past our own selfishness and deepens our connection to others. In Zen, we're taught to cultivate dana paramita, the perfection of giving. It's about more than just giving material things. It's also about offering our time, our attention, and our presence. Sometimes the most important thing we can give is simply being there for someone, listening without judgment. The Buddha didn't ask the merchant to keep the robe or make a profit off of it. He asked him to discern where it could do the most good, to give it to someone truly in need. This kind of discernment is crucial in our own giving. It's not about following the usual patterns, but about seeing where we can make a real difference. As the Buddha wisely said, the greatest gift is the act of giving itself. The Buddha taught that true generosity is born from a transformation within. It's not about fulfilling social expectations or feeding our ego. It's about offering what we have with compassion and understanding. This is what Buddhists call metta, the joy we feel from the happiness of others. It's a joy rooted in compassion, not obligation. Reflect on your own acts of giving tonight. Are they motivated by the desire to please others or by a sense of duty? Or do you give because you truly want to help others without any expectation of recognition? As the Buddha said, "If beings knew as I know the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, nor would the stain of selfishness overcome their minds." Now, let's consider a Zen story about two monks and the river. On their journey, the monks came across a young woman who was unable to cross a swollen river. She was concerned about her fine clothing and the strong current. Seeing her distress, the elder monk immediately stepped forward, picked her up, and carried her across. Once they continued their journey, the younger monk seemed unsettled. Let's explore why his mind wasn't at peace despite the good deed. The younger monk's face showed signs of inner turmoil, his brow furrowed in confusion and disapproval as he walked beside his elder. Finally, after hours of silent reflection, he could no longer hold it in. "Master," he said, his voice laced with concern, "as monks we have taken vows not to touch women. How could you carry her across the river?" The elder monk, smiling gently, responded, "I left the woman at the riverbank hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" The younger monk was left speechless. He had been carrying her in his mind for hours, disturbed, weighed down by judgment, while his elder had moved on, responding to the moment with compassion and returning to the present. The Buddha teaches, what we think, we become. The younger monk's mental burden was much heavier than the physical one the elder monk had briefly borne. It wasn't the action itself, but the thoughts that lingered, creating unnecessary stress and disturbance. Zen Buddhism teaches us to let go of rigid rules and mental judgments, to avoid carrying things that no longer serve us, and to remain anchored in the present moment. The younger monk's mind swirled with confusion, judgment, and unnecessary suffering after witnessing the elder monk's actions. This is a perfect example of how we can create our own burdens. Zen teaches us to differentiate between useful reflection and harmful rumination. Reflecting on our actions is beneficial, but obsessing over them only disrupts our peace. The elder monk exemplified the wisdom of acting with compassion when needed and then letting go. We all carry invisible burdens in our daily lives, replaying old arguments, revisiting mistakes, or worrying about a future that may never come. These mental patterns are like carrying a person across a river and never setting them down. The Buddha's words remind us, let go of the past, let go of the future, let go of the present. True freedom lies in releasing our mental attachments and returning to the simplicity of the present moment. Zen offers practical ways to let go of these burdens. Mindfulness meditation teaches us to notice unnecessary thoughts and gently release them. Focusing on the sensation of our feet on the ground or the rhythm of our breath anchors us in the present, preventing our minds from drifting into the past or future. The elder monk embodies mushin, no mind. It's not about removing all thoughts, but freeing ourselves from attachment to them. When we practice this, we can act with clarity and compassion and return to a peaceful present. Tonight, as thoughts from your day arise or concerns about tomorrow begin to surface, try to notice when you're carrying something or someone unnecessarily in your mind. Can you feel the relief that comes from setting these burdens down? Remember what the Buddha said, nothing is worth clinging to. In letting go, we find the peace we often seek. Let's reflect on a story that teaches us about the mental barriers we often create. This is the story of the empty cup. A university professor, well versed in philosophy and religious texts, visited a Zen master. He had spent years studying and writing books, considering himself knowledgeable in spirituality, but he was eager to learn about Zen. When he arrived, the Zen master welcomed him and invited him to sit. The professor, with confidence, began, I want to understand Zen. I've studied so many philosophies, but I seek something different. What can you teach me? The Zen master smiled and said, let's have tea first, and then we'll talk. The professor, eager to engage in a deep discussion, agreed, thinking the tea was just a prelude to the intellectual exchange. As the Zen master carefully prepared the tea, he poured it into the professor's cup. The cup filled, but the master continued to pour, spilling tea over the rim, onto the table, and even the professor's clothes. The professor leaped up in surprise, shouting, Stop! The cup is full. There's no more room. The Zen master paused and gently said, Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions, theories, and assumptions. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup? In that moment, the professor understood that his extensive knowledge had become an obstacle, not a tool for deeper wisdom. The Buddha's words echo here. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. This highlights the importance of keeping an open, receptive mind, what Zen calls beginner's mind, or Shin. It's the mindset that allows us to learn and grow, unburdened by preconceived notions. What if we could approach life with the curiosity and openness of a beginner? When we do, the world opens up with limitless potential. But when we think we already know everything, we shut ourselves off to new experiences. So, why do we fill our cups to the top, even when we know they can't hold any more? Zen Buddhism reveals several reasons behind this human tendency. The first reason is our ego's need for control, and certainty. By convincing ourselves that we understand the way things work, we create a sense of security in a world that is constantly changing. Our beliefs become our armor, protecting us from the uncertainty of not knowing. The second reason is our attachment to identity. We often define ourselves by our knowledge and experiences. The thought of emptying our cup feels threatening because it forces us to question who we are. If I let go of what I know, who will I be? This fear keeps us clinging to the fullness of our cups, even when they're no longer useful. And there's also the comparing mind. We constantly measure ourselves against others. In many areas of life, knowledge equates to status. The professor's identity was built on being the most knowledgeable, so he found it difficult to adopt the mindset of, I don't know. But here's the problem. When our cup is full, we don't see things as they truly are. Our preconceptions cloud our vision, and we miss the true depth and beauty of life. Only by emptying our cup can we see the world in its fullness and embrace the endless opportunities that await us. In Zen practice, we're taught specific methods to empty our cups. Meditation helps us observe the subtle ways in which we quickly label and judge our experiences through the lens of our past. As we recognize these mental habits, we can create a gap between pure awareness and our preconceived notions. This practice invites us to set aside our judgments and encounter the world with fresh eyes. The Buddha once said, "With our thoughts, we make the world." When our thoughts are rigid, the world around us feels small and predictable. But by emptying our cups and approaching life with an open heart, the world unfolds its limitless beauty. In your daily routine, notice when you approach situations with a full cup. Maybe you're in a conversation, already planning your response while the other person is speaking, or going through the motions of a familiar task, missing its subtle nuances. Perhaps it's when you feel you've already figured someone out, leaving no room for new surprises. Tonight, take a moment to empty your cup. Release your expectations about sleep, relaxation, or even these stories you're hearing now. Can you listen as though these words are new? Can you feel the lightness that comes when you stop categorizing, analyzing, or judging? As the Buddha said, empty your boat of water, and it will go lightly and swiftly. When we free ourselves from mental clutter, life becomes a smoother and more joyful journey. Now let's reflect on a story that shows how wisdom can be found in unexpected places. The story of the Zen master and the muddy road. As the disciples walked with awareness, they eventually reached a breathtaking temple on a hill gleaming in the sunlight. The temple was adorned with golden statues, intricate carvings, and lush, meticulously cared for gardens. Inside, priests in pristine robes conducted elaborate ceremonies, their chanting filling the air with reverence and harmony. The disciples were captivated by the temple's beauty and the devotion of the priests. After taking it all in, they gathered around their master outside the temple and asked, "What do you think of this temple and its practices? Is this the way to enlightenment?" The Zen master remained quiet, leading them back down the hill. He paused at a particularly muddy patch on the road, knelt down, and placed his hand in the mud. Drawing a circle in the dirt, he said, "The truth can be found here as well." At first, the disciples were puzzled, but soon the meaning became clear. The master was showing them that enlightenment is not confined to temples or rituals. It is present in every part of life, even in the messiest, most ordinary moments. The mud, typically overlooked, carries the same truth as the Golden Temple. As the Buddha taught, if you cannot find the truth right where you are, where else do you expect to find it? This teaching challenges us to stop looking for enlightenment in distant, extraordinary places or experiences. Zen encourages us to recognize that wisdom is available in the present moment, in the simplicity of our daily lives. The mud symbolizes the imperfections of life, the emotions, struggles, and ordinary moments that we often try to avoid. We often think that to grow spiritually, we need to rise above the messy realities of life, not realizing that those very realities contain the wisdom we're searching for. In Japanese art, there's a principle called wabi-sabi, which is the appreciation of imperfection and the fleeting nature of life. The mud circle is a perfect symbol of this, inviting us to find meaning in what seems flawed or commonplace. Consider the crack in a teacup, the wrinkles on an aging face, or the garden that's become overgrown. These imperfections are full of wisdom and beauty if only we look closely. Zen Master Dogen said, "If you cannot find the truth where you are, where do you expect to find it?" This echoes the Buddha's teachings and reminds us that truth is not something we find by looking outside of ourselves. It's something we uncover within. The temples, the rituals, the scriptures, they are all signs pointing to something deeper. But that deeper truth isn't contained in them. It's in the present moment, in the dirt, in the mud. So how do we apply the wisdom of the mud circle? By noticing the everyday moments we tend to ignore. Washing dishes, waiting in line, feeling worn out, or confronting conflict. These moments aren't distractions. They are where the practice of mindfulness truly happens. The Buddha said, "My teaching is not a philosophy. It is the result of direct experience." True wisdom isn't something we just think about or read about. It's something we experience. The mud circle offers this direct, lived experience, something a formal ritual could never give. Tonight, as you reflect, think about the mud circles in your own life, the uncomfortable, messy moments you typically try to avoid. Can you bring the same attention to them as you would to a peaceful sunset or a profound teaching? As the Buddha said, all experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, created by mind. When we embrace even the most challenging moments with an open, curious mindset, we turn them from barriers into bridges to greater understanding. Let's now delve into a story about the essence of mastery. This is the tale of a legendary archer. In ancient China, a master archer became famous for his unparalleled accuracy, with a reputation that reached across the empire. His skill was so exceptional that the emperor himself honored him with wealth and prestige. One day, a young archer, inspired by the tales of the master's talents, approached him. Driven by ambition, the young man was desperate to learn the secrets of such mastery. "Master," he said, bowing respectfully, "I have honed my skills over the years, but I yearn to reach the level of mastery that you have. Please teach me the technique that makes your arrows never miss their mark." The master took a moment to observe the young archer before responding. "Meet me at dawn tomorrow on the mountain," the master said. "Bring your bow and arrows." The young archer arrived early the next morning, eager to learn. However, instead of finding a practice range with targets, he found himself standing on the edge of a towering cliff, a vast chasm stretching beneath them. The master guided him to the edge of the precipice, where the ground fell away into the valley below. The master took his stance, drew his bow, and released an arrow into the distance. "Now, it's your turn," the master said. The young archer approached the edge cautiously, his heart racing as he gazed at the dizzying height. His knees trembled, and his hand shook as he tried to nock an arrow, overwhelmed by the fear of the drop. After several attempts, the young archer withdrew from the edge. "I cannot shoot from here, master," he confessed, his voice filled with frustration. "The height overwhelms me, and fear makes my hands tremble. How can I hit the target when I'm afraid of falling?" The master nodded in understanding and spoke softly. "This is the secret you seek. The difference between us is not found in technique or strength. When I shoot, there is only the bow, the arrow, and the target. There is no fear, no thoughts of success or failure, no concern about being observed or praised. The self fades away entirely. Only the unity of archer and target remains." He paused for a moment, letting the words sink in. "You miss your mark, not because of a lack of skill, but because you are divided. Part of you aims the arrow, while another part fears falling, desires success, and fears failure. When you can shoot with your whole being, free from fear or desire, mastery will be yours." The young archer bowed deeply, feeling the weight of the lesson. What he had received was more than just a lesson in archery. It was a lesson for life itself. As the Buddha said, "Your work is to discover your world, and then, with all your heart, give yourself to it." True mastery comes from being fully present, unbroken by the illusion of a separate self. Why do we find it so difficult to achieve this state of undivided attention? Zen points to our tendency to break ourselves into pieces, to stand outside of our experience, comparing, evaluating, and seeking validation. This observing ego separates us from the flow of life, keeping us from acting in harmony with our environment. The attachment to outcomes, success, failure, praise, or punishment, only further divides our awareness. When we focus too much on the target, whether real or metaphorical, we create tension that interferes with the natural grace of our actions. Fear is the third barrier, a survival instinct that, while essential in real danger, often arises unnecessarily in everyday situations. The young archer's fear of falling symbolizes the many ways we hold back from fully committing due to perceived risks to our safety, reputation, or self-image. In Zen, this complete focus is known as mushin, the state of no mind, or zanmai samadhi. It's a state where the line between the doer and the deed disappears, and action flows effortlessly without self-conscious thought. Athletes call this being in the zone. Artists experience it as the state where they are carried by their work, and musicians feel it as merging with the rhythm of the music. The Buddha taught, just as a solid rock remains unmoved by the storm, the wise are unaffected by praise or blame. This steadiness arises not from rigidity, but from immersion in the present moment, undistracted by what others think or whether we measure up to external expectations. Zen practice trains us to cultivate this state of undivided presence, both in formal meditation and in everyday actions. In Zazen, the seated practice of meditation, we let go of our thoughts and return to simple presence. Whether we're engaging in archery, calligraphy, tea ceremonies, or martial arts, the goal is to bring this same undistracted focus to everything we do. You've likely experienced moments of this absorption in your own life, perhaps while playing sports, creating something artistic, solving a complex problem, or even performing simple tasks like washing dishes or walking outdoors. In these moments, the sense of a separate self fades, and we experience the joy of complete presence. The lesson of the Master Archer is universal. Whether you're in a conversation, working on a project, taking care of a child, or cooking a meal, the question is, can you bring your full presence to the activity? Can you notice when part of you is fully engaged while another part is distracted by worry, planning, or judgment? As the Buddha taught, happiness is not a destination, but the way. The true joy we seek doesn't come from achieving a specific outcome, but from the quality of presence we bring to each moment. As you prepare for sleep tonight, can you approach rest with the undivided focus of the archer? Instead of forcing sleep or stressing about getting enough rest, can you simply embrace the experience of lying down, feeling your body relax into the bed, and breathing deeply and slowly? Remember the Buddha's words, peace comes from within. Do not seek it outside yourself. The peace we crave is always within reach if we accept the present moment as it is. Now, let's turn to a story that highlights how sometimes the best solutions come from seeing a problem from a new angle. This is the story of the Zen master and the massive stone blocking the road in a village nestled in the mountains. A huge stone had fallen onto the main road, blocking the way. It was so heavy that the villagers couldn't move it despite their best efforts. Strong men tried pushing it together, but it wouldn't budge. Some tried breaking it into pieces, but the stone was too solid, and their tools couldn't even scratch its surface. Others tried digging around it, but the ground was too hard, and the stone was too deeply embedded. Frustrated, the villagers decided to seek help from a Zen master who lived in a nearby monastery. The master, known for his creativity and wisdom in solving difficult problems, agreed to come take a look. A crowd gathered as the Zen master slowly made his way to the stone. The Zen master's approach was different from what everyone expected. Instead of offering a technical fix or a practical method to move the boulder, he circled it slowly, observing it with great attention. The villagers waited with bated breath, eager for his solution. After a long pause, the master asked a question that left them all silent. "Why must the stone be moved?" "Because it blocks the road," one villager said, puzzled by the question. "It slows us down and makes travel difficult." The master nodded thoughtfully and replied, "The stone blocks one path, but it may be showing you another." He then guided the villagers in clearing and creating a new path around the stone. Working together, they soon had a smooth, alternate route that circled the stone. Not only did this solve their immediate problem, but the once maligned stone became a central feature of the village. Over time, it became a place where children played, elders rested, and the villagers came to see it as a symbol of their ability to adapt. Before he left, the master shared his final piece of wisdom. Some obstacles cannot be moved. The challenge is in finding a way to live with them or to go around them. What appears to block your path might be guiding you toward a new direction. This teaching is about learning how to guide our thoughts skillfully. Instead of forcing them into rigid patterns, we can gently lead them to creative solutions. The villagers were so fixated on removing the stone that they overlooked the possibility of creating a new path. Zen Buddhism teaches us to overcome the mental limitations that keep us stuck in conventional ways of thinking. The villager's approach to the stone highlights three mental patterns that often hold us back. The first is our attachment to expectations. We tend to believe that things should be a certain way, and the villagers were convinced the solution involved either moving or breaking the stone to restore the road. This fixed mindset prevented them from seeing alternatives. The second pattern is fixed mind, or rigid thinking, a concept rooted in Buddhist philosophy. When we face resistance, our instinct is often to push harder with the same methods rather than stepping back to reassess our approach. This leads to frustration and stagnation. Third is the failure to question our assumptions. The villagers assumed the stone was the problem, but in reality, their relationship with it, how they approached the challenge, was the real obstacle. The Zen master reframed the problem, showing that the stone wasn't the issue. The need for a path was. Zen teaches us to think differently, using paradoxes and koans to disrupt conventional logic. Questions like, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Force our minds to think in new ways. This kind of mental training leads to lateral thinking, the ability to see problems from unexpected angles and come up with creative solutions. The Buddha wisely said, we are shaped by our thoughts. We become what we think. If we stay stuck in old patterns, we'll keep encountering the same obstacles. By learning to think flexibly, we can find new ways to overcome challenges. Think about a problem you're currently facing. Are you stuck in a fixed mindset, or can you approach it from a new angle? Are you still trying to move your stone by doing the same thing over and over with little success? What if, like the Zen master, you stepped back and questioned everything you believed about the problem? In Japanese culture, there's a powerful concept called ma, the space between things. Sometimes the real solution lies not in the things themselves, but in the relationship between them. The villagers found their answer not by focusing on the stone or the road separately, but by rethinking how they could relate to both. Tonight, as you reflect on your own struggles, try approaching them from a new perspective. What if your obstacle isn't something to be removed, but something that's meant to be integrated into your path? Could it be revealing a new direction for you? The Buddha reminds us, no matter how hard the past, you can always begin again. Each moment presents a fresh opportunity to reset and see things through a new lens, uncovering solutions that were once hidden. Let me share a story about the transformative power of letting go. This is the story of Tanzan and Akido, two monks traveling through the countryside during a heavy rainstorm. Brother Aikido, after some time, finally asked, "We monks aren't supposed to be near women, especially young and beautiful ones. It's dangerous. Why did you do that?" Tanzan answered quietly, "I left the girl by the river." "Are you still carrying her?" In that moment, Aikido fell silent, suddenly aware of the heavy burden he'd been carrying for hours. Not the physical weight of a woman, but the mental load of judgment, concern, and unnecessary agitation. While Tanzan had simply responded with compassion in the moment and moved on, Aikido had allowed the past to consume him. The Buddha's wisdom resonates here. Let go of the past. Let go of the future, let go of the present, and cross over to the farther shore of existence. Tanzan embodied this lesson, understanding that true freedom is found not in clinging to rigid external rules, but in embracing internal freedom, the ability to act appropriately and then move forward without lingering. So why, like Aikido, do we sometimes carry mental burdens that we should release? Zen Buddhism teaches us that several factors keep us chained to unnecessary thoughts. First, there's our tendency to ruminate, endlessly revisiting past events we can't change. This habit drains our energy, reinforcing negative emotions like anger or anxiety. Second, our attachment to rigid rules over the deeper principles behind them. Aikido fixated on the letter of the rule, avoiding women, missing the spirit of compassion it was meant to cultivate. Tanzan, however, knew that true compassion sometimes means stepping outside the boundaries of convention, and that purity of heart is not found in strict adherence to rules, but in acting without selfish desire. Finally, there's papanka, or mental proliferation, the cycle of thoughts that spiral into complex, unnecessary narratives. Aikido's initial reaction led him to a spiral of unnecessary thoughts about propriety, risks, and his companion's actions. It was suffering he created for himself, a classic case of mental chatter. Zen practice is a gentle teacher, helping us notice when we're carrying more than we need to. Through meditation, we begin to observe our thoughts without becoming lost in them. We learn to discern when our thoughts are constructive and when they are merely ruminations that hold us in the past or future. We then cultivate the practice of returning to the peaceful clarity of the present moment. The Buddha taught, in the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. This teaching encourages us to consider what we may be clinging to that no longer serves us. It could be resentments from past hurts, anxieties about the unknown, or judgments about ourselves and others. In Zen, we practice session, where through deep meditation we become aware of the burdens we've been carrying and find the relief of setting them down. Letting go doesn't mean ignoring or forgetting our experiences, but allowing them to no longer weigh us down. In your own life, notice when you're still carrying something long after the event has ended. Are you replaying a conversation, worrying about a mistake, or nurturing a grievance? Like Tanzan, can you meet the moment with grace and return to the present without unnecessary baggage? The Buddha taught, happiness never decreases by being shared, and similarly, our peace of mind grows when we let go of what no longer needs to be carried. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, see if you can gently release the mental burdens you've been carrying. Picture each worry, judgment, or unresolved situation placed beside you, allowing yourself to feel the lightness that comes from letting go. Those thoughts, they'll still be there when the sun rises, if you truly need them. But for now, just for this night, enjoy the rare ease of setting them aside. Let your mind stretch out, weightless and wide. Tanzan taught us that real liberation doesn't come from avoiding struggle. It's in walking through it and emerging with your heart still open. Here's a tale about the soundless voice within us. It's called The Cricket's Echo. In the chaos of a lively Japanese metropolis stood a serene old temple, its golden roof basking in sunlight. Despite the honking horns and clicking cameras outside, the temple carried a calm that felt almost otherworldly. One day, a musician stepped into this sacred space. Having trained in both melody and mindfulness, he was fascinated by the temple's silence. There was a kind of music in it. He sat quietly, let his mind settle, and listened deeper than before. Amid distant chatter and soft footsteps, he detected a barely there hum. Intrigued, he searched until he found a tiny cricket hidden in a weathered crack of a wooden pillar. "How can such a small sound fill this great hall?" he murmured. He turned to an elderly monk sweeping nearby and asked, "Did you know about the cricket in that pillar?" The monk chuckled warmly. "Ah, our ancient companion." The musician continued, "But with all this outside noise, how can it be heard?" The monk paused, then waved for the young seeker to come along. Without saying a word, the monk walked the musician to the temple's entrance. He reached inside his robe, pulled out a single coin, and let it fall. It struck the stone floor with a clear chime. In an instant, nearly everyone inside turned. The monk raised his eyes. "See that?" he whispered. "The world hears what it's programmed to care about." He continued, "The coin's sound isn't louder than the crickets, but money speaks a language society never stops teaching. That little insect, it's been singing its heart out for years, yet few pause to listen. Why? Because silence doesn't sell. Noise does." He leaned closer. "Still the mind, and you'll hear what others can't, even the truth that hides in plain sound. Silence isn't a lack of sound," he added. "It's the presence of perception." The young musician bowed, deeply moved. This wasn't music theory. This was a doorway. He had learned that hearing is passive, but listening is a practice. The Buddha's words echoed like a drumbeat. Patience is a warrior's true strength. The enemy isn't always outside. It's the cluttered mind, the compulsive thinking, the fears and judgments that drown out our clarity. Our real challenge? Taming the chaos within long enough to catch life's softest lessons. Zen suggests we're wired to chase fireworks and ignore candlelight, just as the coin drew attention while the cricket remained background noise. Our minds leap like monkeys, from worry to fantasy, rarely resting in awareness. But in stillness, we find what the noise was hiding all along. Inside our heads, the dialogue never ends. It edits life before we feel it, turns sunlight into theory, turns wonder into routine. And what we lose most is the simplest thing: presence. Children don't miss the small things. They still hear the world whisper, but we forget. We rush. We explain away the magic. Zen teaches a different quiet, not the kind that avoids thought, but the kind that watches, a silence that listens. With practice, we catch ourselves mid-narrative and return to what is. This isn't about silencing the mind, it's about hearing the silence underneath. The Buddha said, "What we think, we become." When our thoughts are loud and scattered, so are we. When they're still, wisdom appears like a ripple in a clear pond. Japanese artists speak of ma, the pause that defines everything. In music, it's the space between notes. In speaking, it's the silence that deepens meaning. In life, it's where the insight lives, in the quiet. The cricket in the temple, he never left. He sings for the part of you that's still listening, the soft, steady truths you used to notice. When we learn to be silent inside, we hear them again, clearer than ever. As the world quiets down and the hum of the day fades into shadows, something else begins to emerge. Can you sense it? The rhythm of your breath, the steady beat of your heart, the truths your busy thoughts have been talking over. The Buddha once said, "Silence isn't empty. It's full of answers." Sometimes what we need isn't more thinking, it's less. And that's exactly what this next story is about. A tale from Zen wisdom, the master and the strawberries. A young disciple, tangled in thought, came to his teacher. Master, I meditate, I practice, but my mind won't stay still. I fear tomorrow. I ache for yesterday. Where is peace? The master didn't answer with words. He stood, gestured. Walk with me. They journeyed along a narrow path, higher and higher, until the ground dropped away into a sprawling, sunlit valley. The river far below sparkled like glass. The wind whispered through pine needles. Then the master sat. From his robe, 2 ripe strawberries appeared. Eat, he said. The student, puzzled, obeyed, and in that one bite, the answer arrived, wordless, whole, and sweet. He raised the fruit and bit in. Instantly his eyes widened. The flavor was electric, sweet, tart, real, as if every berry he'd eaten before had been a rehearsal, and this was the live performance. The master watched silently, knowing the lesson had begun. When the moment passed, he asked, "Where did your mind go while you tasted it?" The student blinked, thought, "Nowhere. I was completely inside the flavor." "And during that," the master asked, "were you anxious? Were regrets tugging at you?" "No," he admitted. "There was just the strawberry." The master smiled. "Exactly. That's the thing you've been searching for. It's not hidden in secret teachings. It doesn't come when the mind is empty or perfect. It comes when you fully show up to what's in front of you, whether it's fruit or grief, a task or a breath. When you're completely present," he added, "the past can't chase you. The future can't grip you. Those ghosts only live in your mind. And when the mind falls silent," the master said, "peace walks in." The student frowned. "But what about the hard stuff? Pain doesn't taste like strawberries." "True," the master nodded, "but the recipe is the same. Presence is always the secret ingredient. Whether you're staring down sweetness or fear, applause or criticism, the invitation remains the same. Be here. That's the quiet superpower Zen offers." The student bowed low, something inside him shifting. He no longer chased stillness like a prize. From that day forward, he dropped the struggle. Instead of fighting thoughts or forcing peace, he simply showed up, fully, for each breath, each sip, each step. And slowly, he discovered that the calm he'd been searching for had been hiding in plain sight the whole time. The Buddha once said, "Don't live in the rearview mirror. Don't daydream the road ahead. Drive your awareness right into now." That's the fast lane to freedom, not by running from the moment, but by stepping into it so completely that the ordinary becomes luminous. But staying present, that's where we trip. Zen says we get snagged on a few sticky traps. First, our addiction to time travel. The mind jumps back to what was or spins stories about what could be, barely touching what is. This is so automatic we forget it's happening, yet it robs us of this moment over and over again. Second, our mental rating system, constantly judging. Good, bad, boring, important, useless. Every moment gets labeled. And with those labels comes tension. We lean toward what we like and resist what we don't. That tension yanks us out of presence. Third, our obsession with the extraordinary. We think peace only lives in peak moments, mountain views, deep meditations, life-changing breakthroughs. So we overlook the quiet miracles in front of us. A breath, a berry, a blink of beauty. The Japanese call it ichigo ichi, one moment, one chance, never to be repeated. That's where the magic hides. This single moment, this breath, this glance, this sensation is happening once, just once. When I understand that presence doesn't feel like effort, it feels like instinct. I want to be here fully because it'll never happen again. Zen builds that muscle, not just in meditation halls, but in kitchens, sidewalks, crowded subways. In Zazen, I notice when I leave the moment and I return. No drama, no guilt. In life, every act becomes an invitation to do the same. The Buddha said something so simple, so radical. Peace lives in the present, not in yesterday's sorrow or tomorrow's stress. It's a lesson in sanity as much as spirituality. So tonight, before sleep claims me, I'll try this. Presence. I'll notice the feel of the blanket, the tempo of my breath, the release in my shoulders. Nothing to fix. Just here. Be there fully, Buddha taught. And I think he was right. Inside that fullness, peace doesn't hide. It just is. And now I turn the page. The next story waits, one that speaks of effort, clarity, frustration, the art of polishing. A monk, worn from years of trying, stepped up to his teacher. I've meditated, obeyed, studied, and I still don't feel any different, he said, voice tight with longing. What have I missed? The student asked, frustration trembling in his voice. The old master said nothing, only gestured for the student to follow. Down a long corridor, into a forgotten room behind the temple, dust hung like fog, and there, buried beneath relics and scrolls, stood a mirror, old, clouded, hidden by time. Look at this mirror, the master finally spoke. The student squinted at its faded form. Can you tell me, did the dust make the mirror? The student blinked. No, the mirror was always there. The dust just covered it. And what if someone wanted to see themselves clearly? Asked the master. What must they do? Clean it, the student said quietly, the lesson now gleaming behind his eyes. The master handed him a cloth and nodded. Then begin. And so he did. Day after day, the grime didn't give up easily. He scrubbed, experimented, polished. Sometimes it felt hopeless, but with time and grit, the mirror slowly returned to life, not new, but unveiled. Weeks later, the master returned. He gazed into the newly radiant glass. Did your work create this mirror's shine? He asked. No, said the student, standing taller now. It was always there. I just cleared what covered it. The master smiled. Just like your true self, it was never lost, only hidden. You don't have to build your best self from scratch. Truth is, you already are that self. Always have been. The core of you, it's untouchable, calm, clear, connected. Your journey isn't about becoming something new. It's about unlearning the things that buried it. All that baggage, the teacher said, that's your dust. That anxiety, that old grudge, that story you can't let go of? Dust. The techniques, meditation, mindfulness, reflection, they aren't magic. They're maintenance tools. They don't make you enlightened. They help you reveal who you were before the world got loud. And that realization, it flipped everything for the young monk. He stopped reaching. He started returning. Instead of chasing peace, he cleaned out the noise. And guess what? Underneath, it was already there. The mind is everything, the Buddha said. What you think, you become. That's not just philosophy, it's science and soul. Your thoughts are shaping your reality every second. If you're constantly playing the highlight reel of your failures or future fears, you're adding dust, thick, sticky dust. So why is it so hard to stay clear? Because most of us are running on autopilot, That's ignorance, not stupidity, just a forgetting. We mistake the muck for the mirror, add in our mental habits, defensiveness, comparison, guilt, and you got layers. But here's the good news. Dust is removable. These mental patterns accumulate one on top of the other until they form a dense veil that hides the natural brilliance beneath. The third hurdle we face is cultural conditioning, the belief that life is about achieving, gaining, and improving. We are conditioned to think that we need to add something to ourselves to become whole, when in reality, we need to strip away the clutter to reveal our innate completeness. In Zen, the term session means to touch the mind-heart, and it perfectly encapsulates the practice of clearing away the dust from the mirror. By directly engaging with our heart-mind, we contact the eternal essence beneath the obscurations, our Buddha nature, our original face, the pure self we were before time began. Zen is fundamentally a practice of cleaning, not accumulating. Meditation helps us recognize the thoughts, emotions, and sensations that arise, allowing us to witness them without getting lost in them. Ethical precepts keep us from creating more dust through harmful actions, and wisdom teachings bring us back to the truth, reminding us that clarity is always present beneath the surface. As the Buddha said, our current life is shaped by our thoughts from yesterday, and the thoughts we have today will build the life of tomorrow. This teaching reminds us that the dust in our minds is not permanent. With awareness, it can be swept away. Throughout your day, notice when your clarity is clouded by stress, worry, or judgment. Instead of resisting or succumbing to these clouds, can you see them as temporary dust on the mirror of your true self? As the Buddha said, nothing is permanent. Everything is always changing. Even the dust will fade. As you settle into rest tonight, imagine all the clutter of the day, your thoughts, emotions, and experiences gradually dissolving, revealing the pure, untainted mirror of your true awareness. The Buddha's words echo, "Look within. You are the Buddha. The clear mirror of your authentic nature has always been there, waiting patiently for the tender act of clearing away the dust that hides it." Now, let's reflect on a story that reveals the simplicity of understanding. This is about pointing at the moon. One evening, a Zen master and his disciple were walking under the light of a brilliant full moon. The path before them shimmered with silver light, and the shadows deepened as they moved in peaceful silence. Noticing his disciple's furrowed brow, the master asked, "What's troubling you?" "Master," the disciple replied, "I've been studying the sutras with great devotion, but the more I read, the more lost I feel. One text contradicts another. Some speak of intense practice, others of sudden enlightenment. Some preach compassion, others focus on wisdom. I cannot make sense of it all." The master, listening quietly, then pointed to the full moon above. "Look," he said. The disciple looked up at the moon, glowing brightly in the dark sky. "Tell me," said the master, "are you looking at my finger or at the moon?" "At the moon," replied the disciple, puzzled. "Did you need to study my finger to see the moon?" asked the master. "No," said the disciple. "Exactly," said the master. "The sutras, the teachings, and all the methods are simply fingers pointing at the moon. They are not the moon itself. They guide us toward the direct experience of reality, but they are not reality. If you focus too much on the finger, analyzing it, comparing it to other fingers, or debating its worth, you'll miss the point of where it's directing you." The master continued walking, then paused to add, teachings may appear contradictory because they are addressing different people, each with distinct needs, or they describe different parts of the same reality. Imagine many fingers pointing at the same moon from various perspectives, but the moon itself isn't divided or confusing. When you look directly at it, you'll see only the moonlight, pure and whole. The disciple in silence reflected on these words. As they walked on, he found himself less preoccupied with trying to figure things out intellectually and more present with the experience. The moonlight, the cricket's song, and the cool breeze of the evening. For the first time, the disciple understood that the true path to wisdom isn't about collecting concepts, but about opening to the direct experiences the concepts are pointing to. The Buddha's teaching, my teaching, is like a finger pointing to the moon. Do not mistake the finger for the moon, cautions us not to get stuck on the teachings, but to use them to guide us to a direct encounter with reality. Why do we confuse the finger with the moon? Zen Buddhism reveals several reasons for this confusion. The first is our ingrained tendency toward conceptual thinking. From childhood, we are conditioned to view the world through labels and categories. This conceptual framework becomes so dominant that we begin to mistake our mental constructs for the reality they represent. The first obstacle is our cultural conditioning to seek knowledge instead of wisdom through experience. In schools, we are praised for accumulating and organizing information, yet seldom is true understanding rewarded, the kind that comes from deep, embodied wisdom. This mentality often carries over into spiritual practice, where we unknowingly treat enlightenment as another intellectual achievement to acquire. The second challenge is the comfort of the familiar. We cling to what we already know because it feels safe, whereas direct experience often places us in the unknown, where no easy answers or frameworks exist. Concepts and theories give us a sense of control, while direct experience confronts us with the vast uncharted terrain of existence that transcends our cognitive maps. Shikantaza, the Zen practice of just sitting, exemplifies this direct approach. Rather than engaging in intellectual concepts about reality, we simply sit and allow the experience to unfold naturally without interference from the mind's need to label or categorize. It's the essence of the teaching to see the moon rather than becoming lost in analyzing the finger pointing to it. Zen often employs paradox, silence, or surprising actions to shake us out of our reliance on conceptual thinking and point us directly to the truth. The flower held up by the master, the unexpected shout, or the sound of a stick hitting the floor, these are all techniques meant to jolt us into perceiving the world as it truly is, beyond words and thought. The Buddha's teaching, if you light a lamp for someone else, it will also brighten your path, reminds us that teachings should guide us, not trap us. When we treat teachings as tools to illuminate our path rather than objects to cling to, they naturally reveal the clarity they were meant to. Be mindful of when you find yourself more focused on the finger than the moon. Maybe you're getting lost in theoretical discussions about teachings instead of applying them practically. Perhaps you're accumulating insights and spiritual concepts, but haven't allowed them to affect your daily life. Or you could be endlessly comparing paths and methods, but not fully living the one you're on with complete presence. Tonight, as you lie in awareness, Can you let go of all thoughts about relaxation, sleep, or even these very stories you're hearing? Can you move beyond the fingers of instruction and directly experience the moon? The Buddha's teaching is simple. Mindfulness is simply being aware of what you're doing in each moment. This is the direction we need to follow. Focus on the moon, not the finger, pointing at it. Let's reflect on a story about how we handle challenges. This is the story of the farmer's horse. In a small village surrounded by hills, there lived an old farmer who was known for his unshakable calm. Whether the news was good or bad, he always replied with the same phrase, "We'll see." One day, his only horse, essential for farming and transporting goods, ran away. The neighbors, hearing the news, quickly came to offer their sympathy. "How unfortunate," they said. "Your only horse is gone. How will you manage now?" The farmer responded simply, "We'll see." A week later, the horse returned, but it had brought a whole herd of wild horses. The farmer, who once had just one horse, now had a dozen. The neighbors, upon hearing this, rushed back to the farm in astonishment. The neighbors, upon hearing of the farmer's newfound fortune, came to congratulate him. "How incredible," they said. "Now you have a whole herd of strong horses. You'll be the richest farmer in the village." The farmer simply replied, "We'll see." The following day, the farmer's son began training the wild horses, attempting to break a particularly strong stallion. Unfortunately, he was thrown and broke his leg. Once again, the neighbors gathered, offering their condolences. "What a misfortune," they said. "Your son is injured and unable to help with the work. With the harvest coming, things look grim." The farmer, unfazed, responded, "We'll see." Soon after, military officials came to the village to conscript all able-bodied young men for a war against a neighboring kingdom. It was a dangerous war, and many young men would not return. Because of his injury, the farmer's son was exempt from being drafted and remained at home. The neighbors whose sons had been taken came to the farmer in tears, expressing both their sorrow and admiration for his good fortune. The farmer, listening to their mixed emotions, once again replied, "We'll see." The Buddha taught, "Do not judge by appearances. Find the truth behind all form." The farmer's response embodies this wisdom. His calm and consistent refrain demonstrates his understanding that no event can be fully grasped in isolation. Its significance unfolds through the interconnected web of causes and conditions. Why do we instinctively categorize events as good or bad? Zen Buddhism identifies this tendency as the mind's dualistic nature, which classifies experiences into opposite categories. This creates an illusion of control, but it prevents us from truly understanding the ever-changing nature of reality. The Japanese concept of fubika refers to a state of mind that does not divide experiences into categories of like and dislike. It's a way of being that remains open to whatever comes, without filtering it through personal preferences. The farmer exemplifies this quality with his ability to meet each situation with spacious awareness, free from judgment. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh teaches about inner being, the interdependence of all things. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything is connected to everything else in infinite ways. The farmer's story highlights this truth. The loss of his horse led to the acquisition of many horses, which then led to his son's injury and, ultimately, his son's exemption from military service. Each event flows seamlessly into the next, an unbroken chain of causes and effects. The Buddha said, If we could see the miracle of a single flower clearly, our whole life would change. This teaching reminds us that even the most ordinary things contain deep complexity. When we see beyond our initial judgments, we recognize that nothing is as it seems. Every experience has dimensions we cannot fully comprehend in the moment. Zen practice helps us develop the ability to suspend judgment, especially when our minds rush to categorize things as good or bad. By learning to create space around these reactions, we begin to approach life as the farmer does, with an open and patient "we'll see." This doesn't mean passivity or indifference. The farmer still acted when necessary, searching for his horse, caring for his son, adjusting to new circumstances. But he did so without the additional suffering that comes from quick judgments and emotional reactivity. The Buddha taught, "As rain falls equally on the just and the unjust, do not burden your heart with judgments, but pour your kindness equally on all." This wisdom invites us to mirror the farmer's calm response to life by treating others with the same unjudging compassion. When we suspend our rush to judgment, we allow compassion to flow naturally. Think about the events in your life that you've classified as good or bad. Can you hold them with the farmer's "we'll see" perspective? Can you acknowledge that the full meaning of these experiences has yet to unfold? As the Buddha said, everything is transient, nothing stays the same, everything is in a state of becoming. In this understanding lies the wisdom to meet the ever-changing flow of life with equanimity and grace. Let's consider a story that illustrates the true nature of wisdom. It's called The Cup of Tea. A respected professor, famous for his in-depth knowledge of Zen philosophy, went to visit a Zen master. He was eager to meet a living master, but also hoped to showcase his scholarly understanding of the tradition. When he arrived, the Zen master invited him to sit. Before discussing anything, the master suggested they share a cup of tea. The professor agreed, thinking this would be a prelude to a deep conversation. As the master prepared the tea, the professor launched into a monologue about Zen, quoting texts and comparing different interpretations of Zen. The master remained silent, attentively listening. When the tea was ready, the master poured it into a cup and placed it in front of the professor. The professor, still talking, acknowledged the tea, but didn't pause for long before continuing his philosophical analysis. The Zen master kept pouring tea even after the cup was full, spilling the liquid over the edge and into the professor's lap. "Stop!" the professor cried, jumping up. "The cup is full. There's no room for any more tea." The Zen master halted, met the professor's gaze, and said, "Just like this cup, you are full of your own thoughts and judgments. How can I show you Zen if you don't first empty your cup?" The professor fell silent, realizing that his knowledge of Zen had become a barrier to true understanding. His mind was so crowded with theories and opinions that there was no space left for direct, unfiltered experience. With a deep bow, the professor acknowledged his mistake. "I see now that I don't truly understand Zen. Please teach me as though I am a beginner." The master smiled and responded, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. Let's begin with an empty cup." From that moment, the professor embraced a new path of learning. Rather than adding more knowledge to his already full cup, he focused on emptying it. He let go of his preconceived notions and intellectual frameworks to allow room for fresh personal insight. The Buddha's teaching, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's, there are few, echoes in the shift. True wisdom often asks us to surrender our assumptions and empty ourselves to truly see. The professor's journey from a mind full of theories to one that embraced emptiness illustrates the power of unknowing. Zen Buddhism helps us understand why knowledge and wisdom are not always the same thing. From a young age, we're taught to value intellectual knowledge above all else. We gather facts, concepts, and theories, but often overlook other ways of knowing, those that come from direct experience or intuition. There's also an attachment to knowing. Having clear opinions and extensive knowledge often becomes part of our identity, defining our sense of self. However, admitting we don't know something, emptying our cup, can feel unsettling. It threatens the ego, forcing us into vulnerability. Then there's our cultural discomfort with emptiness. Western cultures often view emptiness as something negative, a void that must be filled. But in Zen, emptiness is a fertile space, full of potential, like an empty cup waiting to hold new tea. Mushin, or no mind, teaches us to let go of rigid thoughts and fixed ideas. It doesn't mean being thoughtless, rather, it's about holding thoughts lightly and allowing space for creativity and insight to arise. Zen practices, such as meditation and shoshin, beginner's mind, encourage us to recognize when we're caught in concepts and gently guide us back to the present, to direct experience. The Buddha once said, "To know and not to act is not yet to know." True understanding goes beyond intellectual comprehension. It transforms how we live. When our knowledge affects our actions and way of being, it's no longer just information, it's wisdom, the tea that fills the cup. Do you ever start a conversation already predicting what the other person will say? Or read a book, only seeing it through the lens of your existing beliefs? Perhaps you approach challenges thinking you already know the outcome based on your past experiences. These full cup moments prevent fresh insight and inhibit real growth. Tonight, as you settle into awareness, try a different approach. Empty your cup. Let go of everything you think you know about relaxation, yourself, and even these teachings. Make room for direct experience to unfold, beyond your judgments and assumptions. The Buddha said, "Empty your boat of water, and it will go lightly and swiftly." When we clear our minds of preconceived ideas, we move through life more gracefully, open to the flow of wisdom. Now, let's reflect on the limitations of judgment through a story about perspective. It's called The Gate of Paradise. There once was a samurai warrior celebrated for his exceptional skills and his deep commitment to the code of honor. After many years of loyal service, the samurai found himself troubled by profound questions about life, death, and the meaning of his path. Hearing of a Zen master in a remote mountain temple, he set off to seek answers. After a long journey, the samurai arrived at the temple where an elderly monk greeted him with warmth. The samurai, full of pride, introduced himself and asked, "Master, tell me about heaven and hell." The Zen master looked up at him, then suddenly burst into laughter. "You call yourself a samurai?" he sneered. "You're just a fool in a costume. What lord would want someone like you to protect him? Go away and stop wasting my time with your childish questions." The moment the Zen master spoke, the samurai's blood boiled with rage. His pride had been slashed to pieces, and with the swiftness of a storm, he drew his sword, raising it above his head to strike the monk down. But at that exact moment, the master, with unwavering calm, gazed into the warrior's eyes and said, "That is the gate of hell." The samurai froze. In that stillness, the warrior had an epiphany. The master's actions weren't random. They were intentional, designed to reveal just how swiftly pride, anger, and violence could manifest, creating a hellish realm within the samurai's own mind. Humbled by this truth, the samurai slowly lowered his sword, returned it to its sheath, and bowed deeply, grateful for the master's teaching. As he rose, the master looked at him with kind eyes and said, "And that is the gate of paradise." In that moment, the samurai understood that heaven and hell weren't distant realms to be reached after death, but were created in each moment by his thoughts, choices, and awareness. The Buddha taught, "What we are today comes from our thoughts of yesterday, and our present thoughts build our life of tomorrow." The life we experience is a reflection of our thoughts. The samurai's realization echoed this truth. Suffering and freedom are not dictated by external events, but by the internal choices we make in response to them. Why do we so easily create our own hells? Zen Buddhism teaches that several habits of mind contribute to this. First is reactivity, the tendency to respond automatically to triggers without mindfulness, perpetuating patterns of suffering. The samurai's immediate shift from pride to rage shows just how quickly these ingrained patterns can overwhelm us. The second force at play in creating our own hells is our deep attachment to our self-image. We tend to cling to how we see ourselves, and even more so to how we believe others should perceive us. For the samurai, his sense of honor and respect as a warrior was so deeply ingrained that when the Zen master deliberately challenged it, he immediately fell into the hell of violent rage. The third force is our disconnect from awareness. This is when emotions take over and we lose touch with our observing mind, the deeper consciousness within. In his anger, the samurai forgot about his spiritual questions and his higher aspirations, and became completely consumed by his reactive self. The concept of fudoshin, or immovable mind, describes the mental strength to remain calm and steady, no matter the external chaos. This isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about creating a centered awareness that allows us to feel our emotions without letting them control us. The samurai experienced this shift when he lowered his sword, stepping out of reactivity and into conscious choice. Zen practice helps us develop this awareness in a few key ways. Meditation trains us to watch our reactions arise without being swept away by them. Mindfulness throughout the day helps us recognize our triggers before they take hold. Teachings about non-self encourage us to hold our identities loosely, reducing the emotional reactions tied to our self-image. As the Buddha taught, "You will not be punished for your anger, you will be punished by your anger." This teaches us that the hell we experience is not punishment from the world, but the direct result of our reactions. Similarly, our moments of peace and paradise are not rewards, but the natural outcome of our awareness and compassion. Observe the gates of hell and paradise in your daily life. Maybe you get irritated when someone is driving slowly, creating a brief but intense hell of frustration and annoyance. Or when a child makes a mistake, you respond with kindness, and you open a gate to paradise through your compassionate reaction. These small decisions, repeated throughout the day, shape the overall emotional atmosphere of our minds. As you prepare for sleep tonight, notice if your mind starts creating any hell realms through worries, regrets, or revisiting the day's frustrations. Can you see these as mental creations, not absolute truths? Can you pause and lower your sword as the samurai did, choosing awareness over automatic reactivity? The Buddha taught, holding on to anger is like holding a hot coal with the intent to throw it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. In letting go of that coal, we open the gate to paradise and realize that freedom is always just one conscious decision away. This idea is beautifully reflected in the story of Rioan's moon, where wisdom emerges not through external seeking, but through direct experience. Sitting peacefully, Rioan watched the thief slip away into the dark night, his gaze slowly drifting to the full moon overhead. With a quiet sigh, he softly remarked, "Poor fellow, I wish I could share this beautiful moon with him." This seemingly simple moment carries a profound message about wealth and happiness. The thief was on a quest for material riches, while Rioan had discovered something far more valuable, the ability to appreciate the beauty of the moon, the present moment's richness, and the freedom that comes from letting go of attachment. The Buddha said, "Let us rise up and be thankful." If we didn't learn much today, at least we learned a little. If we didn't learn a little, at least we didn't fall ill. And if we were ill, we didn't die. Let's be thankful. This teaching is at the heart of Rioan's philosophy. True contentment doesn't come from what we acquire, but from appreciating what's already here. So why do we seek happiness in places that can never provide it? Zen Buddhism identifies a few key reasons why we go astray. First, we're conditioned to believe that accumulating things, possessions, status, experiences, will bring satisfaction. This belief is perpetuated by the consumer culture around us, causing us to look outward instead of inward for fulfillment. Second, we confuse pleasure with happiness. Pleasure is the fleeting satisfaction that comes from getting what we want, but happiness is found in our relationship with what is present right now. It's about learning to appreciate what we have without the need for more. Lastly, we often overlook the wonders of the ordinary, just like the thief who missed the beauty of the moon. We're so focused on what we don't have, we miss the abundance that already surrounds us, the breath in our lungs, the beauty in nature, the warmth of human connection, and the simple gift of awareness. The Japanese philosophy of wabi-sabi mirrors Rioan's view on life, finding beauty in what is simple, imperfect, and transient. This way of seeing values the worn and the authentic over the flawless and the permanent. Though Rioan's life was far from luxurious, his humble hut overflowed with the richness of wabi-sabi. This profound beauty can only be seen by a mind open to appreciating life's simple moments. Zen practice trains us to engage with the ordinary, whether in walking, eating, or listening, and to fully receive the depth hidden in these everyday acts. Meditation helps us recognize how we often miss what's right in front of us, as we're constantly reaching for what we think we lack. Simplicity in Zen creates room for deeper appreciation rather than the endless pursuit of more. The Buddha wisely said, "Health is the greatest gift. Contentment is the greatest wealth. Faithfulness is the best relationship." These words guide us toward true well-being, found not in external goods, but in the qualities of the mind and heart that shape our experience. Rioan embodied this wisdom. His true wealth wasn't in possessions, but in his ability to appreciate the moon, his spirit of generosity, and his freedom from attachment. Look at your life. Do you sometimes miss the treasures already available to you? Maybe you're scrolling through social media, feeling incomplete, while the beauty of the present slips by unnoticed. Or perhaps you're focusing on what's missing in your relationships, missing the love that's already there. Tonight, can you rest in awareness and adopt Rioan's perspective? Can you see the moon in your life, the richness and beauty that need no acquisition because they are already present? The Buddha's teachings remind us that the path is not something we find above, but something we uncover within our hearts. True contentment isn't in what we collect, but in our ability to appreciate what is already here. Let's turn to a story about finding your true way. This is the story of choosing the right boat. A young seeker made his way to a riverside monastery renowned for its wise Zen masters. Though he had immersed himself in a variety of spiritual practices, yoga, meditation, the sutras, rituals, and even esoteric teachings, he was left uncertain. Each tradition seemed to offer a different approach, leading to confusion and indecision. Upon his arrival, the young man was greeted by an elderly master who listened with patience to his dilemma. "Master," the seeker said, "I've studied so many paths, yoga, meditation, reading sacred texts, rituals. Each teaching says it is the one true path to enlightenment. But they all seem to contradict each other. How can I know which one is the right path for me?" The master smiled kindly and guided the young man to the riverbank where several boats were anchored: fishing boats, small rowboats, elegant sailboats, and larger transport vessels. "Which of these boats is the right one?" asked the master. The young man was perplexed. "The right boat for what, master?" "Exactly," the master replied. "Without understanding your destination, how can you choose the proper vessel? Some boats are designed for fishing, others for transport, some for speed, and others for shallow waters." The master explained calmly, "There is no one path that is inherently right or wrong. Every spiritual practice serves a unique purpose. The real question is, what serves your journey? What are you trying to achieve? What obstacles do you face? What is your temperament? These answers will show you the right path for your personal quest." The seeker pushed back. "But surely some paths must be more important than others. Some must be closer to the truth." The master pondered for a moment, then asked, "Is a fishing boat superior to a passenger ferry? Or is a sailboat better than a rowboat?" The young man was puzzled. "Each serves a different purpose." "Exactly," said the master. "Just like the boats, each spiritual practice serves a specific need. They all ultimately serve one aim: to free us from suffering and help us awaken to our true nature. While the forms may differ, the essence remains the same." The seeker, now intrigued, asked, "How do I decide which path is mine?" "By knowing yourself," the master answered wisely. "Observe which teachings resonate with you, which practices bring real results in your life. Trust your direct experience, and remember, the boat is not your destination, it's just a means of crossing." The young man bowed deeply, understanding that his journey was not about finding the perfect path, but about finding the path that best suited his journey. The Buddha once put it plainly, "I teach only one thing: suffering and its end. That's the entire blueprint. Not mysticism, not dogma, just a clear and practical goal. It's about what actually works to ease our inner turmoil and bring us into deeper connection with life. Like boats made for different waters, every spiritual tool has its place, but all are meant to carry us toward the same freedom. So why all the spiritual chaos and indecision? Zen sheds light on the confusion. First, we're addicted to dividing things, labeling this path as right and that one as wrong, true or false. But real life doesn't live in those neat little boxes. Awakening has many doors. Next, we cling to appearances. We get wrapped up in the rituals, symbols, or outer trappings of belief. We debate over which robes are correct instead of asking, does this help me suffer less? Does it make me kinder? And finally, we chase certainty, like it's salvation. We want guarantees before we even begin. But the real magic doesn't happen on the shore. It happens once we've set sail. In Japan, two ideas reflect this: juriki and tariki, relying on our own strength or surrendering to something greater. Both paths work. The key is picking one and walking it deeply. Some paths ask for discipline. Others ask for surrender. Zen doesn't force a choice. It sees what is. People need different tools for different terrain. Sometimes we need effort. Other times, faith. Often a rhythm of both. There's a famous Zen koan: if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. It means don't attach to the image of enlightenment. Don't trade your truth for someone else's version. The Buddha himself said, question everything. Accept only what your reason and experience affirm. Truth lives in what works, not in doctrine. Ask yourself, what has actually helped you? What clears the fog? What makes your breath come easier? Are you caught in indecision, drowning in a flood of choices, waiting for the perfect path before taking a step? Tonight, be still. Remember what has actually served you, what has helped you move forward. That's your boat. Let it carry you. No matter what you're doing, walking, washing, wondering, pay attention. That's the essence. Not knowing fancy words, not mastering chants. Just being here, right now, because now is the only place anything real can happen. Let's slip into a story, a riddle wrapped in silence. It's called the One-Handed Echo. Long ago in Japan, during a time of samurai and scrolls, there lived a fierce Zen master named Hakuen. His teachings weren't soft. He wasn't about cozy comfort. He challenged minds, shook hearts, and his most legendary challenge was just 7 words. What is the sound of one hand? A young monk, burning with curiosity, came to study with him. Once ready, Hakuen assigned him this puzzle. This, he said, is your key. Solve it, or Zen will remain a mystery. The monk bowed low and retreated into silence. Days later, he came back, eyes lit with insight. It's the sound of a stream, he said. The master shook his head. Try again. More days passed. It's wind in the pines, said the monk. Still a sound of something, Hakuen replied. Deeper. Again and again the student returned. Birds, bells, rain. Each time the master said no. What was missing? The monk didn't yet realize sometimes the answer isn't another sound. Sometimes it's what remains when sound is stripped away. The young monk had long searched for the right reply, but the longer he tried to answer, the further truth slipped away, until one quiet dawn he ceased chasing answers. He let the question breathe inside him unspoken. In stillness, something shifted. He rose without thought and walked to the master. Hakuen looked at him. "What is the sound of one hand?" he asked. The monk didn't speak. He simply was. The moment itself replied. The master's eyes softened. The riddle had finally dissolved, not solved, but transcended. The moon doesn't need pointing fingers when you're standing in its light. The Buddha once said, "Don't confuse the finger with the moon. Words may direct us, but only presence reveals. It is not the map, but the land beneath your feet that awakens you." This monk's journey mirrors a deeper movement, from grasping ideas to resting in pure experience. But why are we so enchanted by answers? Zen offers clues. One is how we're trained. From childhood, we're taught to value logic over intuition, facts over felt truth. Another is fear, the fear of not knowing. Silence makes us squirm, so we rush to fill it with noise. We answer just to stop the ache of not yet knowing. But what if not knowing is the doorway? Here's the third trap. We treat wisdom like a souvenir, a thing to hold, to name, to quote. But true Zen, it's not something you get. It's something you become. In Japan, they speak of mu, a kind of sacred nothingness that doesn't mean no, but more like go deeper. There's a famous moment. A monk once asked Master Yoshu, "Does a dog have Buddha nature?" Joshu simply said, "Mu," not to give an answer, but to knock the question over like a brittle statue. That's the Zen way. Don't explain truth. Point at it. Knock people into it. Koans like, "What is the sound of one hand?" aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to wear you down until your thinking mind gives up and your real self finally shows up. Buddha said, "The wise aren't moved by praise or blame," because true understanding isn't a theory. It's a transformation. Ideas can be debated. Being can't. Look at your life. Maybe you know everything changes, but then someone dies and you feel it in your chest. Or maybe you've read about mindfulness, but one day you actually sit and it clicks. Not in your head, in your being. So tonight, don't try to think your way into peace. Just be in it. Let go of what's supposed to happen. Be with what is. Or as Buddha said, sometimes the most profound action is stillness. Instead of pushing toward doing, this invitation dares us to not act, to stop grasping, and instead step into what's already here. It's in this space that real experience lives. Let's turn now to a final tale, one that reveals what waits beyond all the searching. It begins on a sacred mountain. In ancient China, there lived a young scholar named Li, who had spent years buried in spiritual scriptures from across traditions. He devoured every sutra, committed verses to memory, and exchanged arguments with the wisest teachers. Still, something vital eluded him. He longed for experience, not just ideas, truth that could be felt, not quoted. Word spread of a Zen hermit high on a sacred peak, and Li resolved to climb the treacherous path in pursuit of this master's insight. Days passed as Li journeyed through tangled forests and up jagged cliffs. At last, he arrived at a weathered hut nestled against the mountain. The master, serene and simple, welcomed him and offered rest. They shared a modest meal, and then Li spoke from the heart. "Master," he said, "I've studied so much. I know the teachings, but something's still missing. What is the real truth? What is the end of this path? What is enlightenment?" The master's gaze was soft and steady. "Before we begin," he said, "shall I make you some tea?" Li agreed. As water boiled, the master asked, "On your way up the mountain, what stood out to you?" Li paused, thinking. The trail was harsh, uneven, full of rocks and roots, I had to stop often just to breathe." "And what else caught your eye?" the old man asked gently. "There were pines whispering in the breeze and wildflowers bursting with color," Lee replied. "I crossed a stream so clear I could see pebbles dancing beneath it, and sometimes the trees opened up and the whole world spilled into view." The old master nodded, carefully pouring the tea. "And now, after all that, what are you hoping to discover here?" Lee paused. "I don't know. Something powerful, a truth that cuts through everything, the core that all the teachings orbit but never quite touch." The master handed him the warm cup and sat quietly beside him, just at the edge of the hut. They sat in stillness, gazing at a canvas of distant peaks and drifting clouds, birds riding invisible waves of air. After a long silence, the master finally spoke. "What you seek walked every mile with you. It was in your effort, in your awe, in your breath. It's here now, in the warmth of this tea, in the sky stretched before us, in the stillness holding it all." He continued, "There's nowhere to go, nothing extra to find. Enlightenment isn't some secret behind a curtain. It's hidden in plain sight. It's in the ordinary, waiting to be seen as extraordinary, in the sacred disguised as the everyday." The master motioned toward the open view. "This mountain isn't more holy than your doorstep. These trees no more divine than the ones in your yard. This moment, right now, is made of the same truth as all the others." Lee looked puzzled. "But why the mountain?" Lee questioned. "Why endure the long climb, the endless learning, the aching search?" The sage chuckled, eyes glinting like candlelight. "The mountain was never the keeper of truth. You simply believed it was. Often we must wear ourselves out chasing shadows before we see we've been holding the light all along." The evening deepened. The breeze carried whispers through the trees. As they sat in silence, Lee began to sense something shifting. The truth wasn't encrypted in sacred texts or hidden in divine moments. It was in life itself, raw, plain, and fully awake. The flower beside the path had always been the master's lesson. The Buddha once said, "To truly witness a single flower is to be transformed forever." This wasn't poetry, it was precision. When perception shifts, the ordinary explodes into wonder. Lee's trek mirrored our own deep assumption that truth is tucked away in rare places, waiting for grand initiations. But what if it was never about gaining something new, and always about seeing what was already offered? We chase ideals, perfect visions of peace, bliss, enlightenment. In doing so, we train ourselves to miss what's real. The present becomes inferior to the dream. Then we spiritualize our avoidance. Wrapped in robes of wisdom, we dodge the hard, chaotic parts of life. Placing truth out there becomes a subtle escape. And finally, we delay, always waiting for a better moment. The path? It begins now. It's made of the very ground beneath our feet. We've all been there, convinced that happiness is just over the next hill. I'll feel fulfilled when I land that opportunity, when I improve myself, when I finally arrive. But that mindset, it keeps the finish line moving, keeps us chasing instead of arriving. There's a powerful Japanese practice called shikantasa. It means just sitting, no goal, no hustle, just being. It teaches one bold idea. This moment, as imperfect and raw as it is, holds everything you need. Zen Master Dogen nailed it. If you can't find truth where you are, where else would you expect to? This challenges the myth that peace is out there, in some future, some guru's words, or some dramatic revelation. Like Lee on the sacred mountain, we often exhaust ourselves looking for what was never gone. The Buddha said, joy naturally blooms in a heart that stops fighting itself. It doesn't need to be earned. It needs to be noticed. When you stop the endless scroll, the comparison, the bargaining with life, you don't fall into emptiness. You fall into fullness. Check yourself. Are you waiting for something to feel whole? A relationship, a solution, a version of you that finally makes it? Each of those beliefs rejects now. But here's the twist. You're already standing on sacred ground. As we close this chapter, ask yourself, what if the peace you've been trying to absorb from these stories was always in you, listening all along? Look not to faraway lands or sacred altars. What you seek resides in the raw immediacy of your own awareness. As we close this shared inquiry, let us trace back through the arc of insights we've uncovered. Every parable held a reflection, an angle on the same essential clarity, that serenity is not an acquisition, but a recognition. The boat with no captain showed us how often we assign blame where there is none. The monk hanging with the tiger, a metaphor for presence amidst threat. The arrows offered a map of unnecessary suffering. The mustard seed exposed grief as a universal thread. The farmer and his horse deconstructed our craving to label events. The Buddha's refusal to accept insult showed us agency. We saw through the teacup that transience is what grants life its value. A robe revealed true charity. The river story taught the futility of carried resentment. The cricket demonstrated the revelations found in stillness, laughter, and kings, thieves, and compassion, all examples that transformation is often born from the unexpected. The archer? Mastery through undivided attention. The heavy stone? A call to reassess. The empty cup? Shattered preconceptions. The farmer in the storm was stillness personified. The tea lesson emphasized receptivity. The samurai's gates? Mind-made heavens and hells. Rion found poetry in moonlight. The boat taught alignment over ambition. One hand sound questioned intellectual knowing. And finally, the mountain. We learned it was always a mirror. As the Buddha noted, the sun, the moon, and the truth are never concealed for long. May these reflections seed deeper awakenings. We thank you for walking with us. Let what was uncovered here not end, but echo on.